So, I'm looking to conduct a little experiment here and launch, I guess it's a bit of a spin-off series to Tecmo Tuesday. Maybe this gets off the ground, maybe it doesn't at all. I've debated with myself whether or not this was feasible or not, or if there'd even be enough interest, but I figure why not at least give it a shot. The worst that could happen is it doesn't work. So I'm going to propose this and then get your opinion on whether or not I should even bother. So what I'm thinking about doing is starting a YouTube-based fantasy football league using Tecmo Super Bowl. With an open invitation to any of you who want to join and run a team. I'm looking for... I was originally thinking 10 people. Well, actually, originally I was thinking 12, and I whittled that down to 10, and then I whittled that down to 8 as my initial target. I'll explain a little bit later why I picked 8, but for now, just go with it. 8 is the number that I'm looking for to start off with this. So, an 8-team league, and I'll be the commissioner. I'm not going to be the GM of any team. I'm completely neutral, just here to run the thing. So, how does this work? Well, similar to real-life fantasy football, we'll run a draft using all 840 players in Tecmo Super Bowl, put them into a pool, and draft fantasy teams to fill up all 8 teams and full 30-man rosters. So, all 11 members of the defense, the 17 members of the offense, including backups, and the 2 specialists, kickers and punter. And then the rosters will be edited accordingly using ROM editing software developed specifically for Tecmo Super Bowl. So once the rosters are formed in the game, then a full season will play out, including playoffs and a championship. Now, in a perfect world, we'd actually play these games against each other on an online multiplayer, but that's probably not practical at all. I mean, it'd be a logistics nightmare. So instead, I'll run CPU versus CPU simulation games with my commentary, similar to the neutral playoff games that I did last season in Tecmo Tuesday. This would focus the importance on the team managing aspect of the game rather than actual game skill, which is better for the sake of parity anyway. Now, this isn't going to be a typical fantasy league where you have to go in and make adjustments every week, like homework. Once the draft is over and your team is formed, you technically don't need to do anything. But in between games, you will be allowed to adjust your lineups if you want to make substitutions or change your playbook around. Regarding the draft itself, now this is probably going to be the most complicated part of the whole thing, but it can easily be done. The draft format is up in the air entirely, as is the whole, league in general. And it depends mainly on how everyone wants to go about it. Ideally, I'd rather do a live draft where we'll do something like link up in a conference chat service like Skype or something. Maybe I'll host a live stream, I don't know, but we'll conduct the draft live. The other option is a virtual draft where everyone will submit a list to me with their preferred picks in order, and the picks will be auto-selected based on who is next on your list. This is if the live draft option ends up being too impractical to coordinate, especially if the different time zones are an issue, and it'll take a decent amount of time out of everybody's day to even do this thing. I mean, 8 teams, 30 rounds, that's 240 picks total. So even if it only takes 30 seconds between each pick, which is a conservative estimate, then that would be a 2-hour draft, which isn't bad, but still, that's how much time would have to be invested. And, it goes up exponentially if we have a bigger league. So 10 teams, it's 300 picks total. We're talking about something closer to 2.5 hours. But that's all just projection anyway. If you're interested, but you're skeptical about the preparation factor and having to dig through the game to look up everyone on the rosters to see who you like, etc., then don't worry, I highly recommend the site TecmoGeek.com. Link is in the description. They've got this thing broken down by positions with all the attributes, including an overall rating, which is an inexact science kind of determined by the creator of the site, but it is a good reference source. And I'll also be sending lists with every name in the pool broken down by position, so it's easier to follow and cross off names, etc. when players are drafted. If it's a live draft, I'll try to have some kind of visual aid, like a share screen thing that will provide a visual aid and make things easier as well, to make the whole thing run as smoothly as we can. There'll be plenty of other details more specific to how the league will function, like if it will indeed be 8 teams or not, how the schedule format goes, playoffs, all that stuff will kind of be more open to discussion. I kind of have an idea as far as the initial template, but it can all be worked and altered. What I'm mainly looking for here before any of this even gets started is whether or not there's interest at all to begin with, both from a participation standpoint and from a spectator standpoint. Are there going to be enough people who would sit down and watch 4 games of simulated CPU versus CPU matchups per week, featuring made-up teams with fantasy rosters from Tecmo Super Bowl? I mean, that's kind of why I whittled it down to 8 teams to have 4 games per week instead of my initial thought of 12 with 6 games. 6 games might be overkill, but I mean, 4 games might be overkill. For sake of reference, I mean, go back to the playoff rounds where I did the commentary over the divisional round in particular, because those were 4 games that were all computer versus computer simulations, and whether or not that's something that you'd be interested in watching at all. So yeah, let me know whether or not you think this is a good idea. Yes, no, maybe so, from a spectator standpoint. From a participation standpoint, if you do want to get involved in this, send me an email at AqualungGameReviews@hotmail.com, because I am going to go by first come, first serve, just in case there is a flood of people that want to do it. Send me an email. If you put it in the comments, then I'm just taking that like as if you're interested but not sure, because I'm going to be going by emails and it'll be easier to determine who submitted their entry first. You don't have to pick your team information, because like I said, this is just an experiment, and right now I'm just looking to see if people want to get involved in this at all. So you don't have to send team information, but the team information that you are able to customize is, number 1, your team name, so your city and nickname. You need to have both, and try to be original. Don't pick something like the Texas Cowboys or anything like that. You can also pick your color scheme. The players' uniforms are customizable with 2 colors, one for the helmet and pants in tandem, and 1 color for the jersey. So whatever color your helmet is, it's the same color as your pants. You can also submit a team logo. This is completely optional. I can't put this into the game, but I'll do some fuckery with post-production. Again, you don't have to submit that information, but if you do want to be in the league, send me an email, and then, you know, your spot will be essentially reserved in the event that this goes through. If you have any other questions about this, because I probably completely overlooked something, leave it in the comment section. I'd rather have questions pertaining to the league in the comment section, that way other people can read them as opposed to an email. The emails are just for if you want to be a GM. So that's about it for this. We'll see what happens.